Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So once again, it's our second Monday of the month, and as usual, we have our public talk, public meeting in English. And tonight, we're going to have Nancy in a few minutes, reading and making a few comments on our inspirational message from the book Our Daily Bread. And then I'll come back here to talk about an item of chapter 2 on the Gospel according to Spiritism, which is the regality or the kingship of Jesus. But before that, as we usually do, we start with an opening prayer so that we can focus even more if we are not focused enough, and so that we can thank the good spirits, thank our dear Master, our dear friend Jesus, and most of all, thank our dear God for the opportunity of being here. And we would say, dear God, creator of the universe and of our small, yet small hearts, we would like, first of all, to thank you once again for the opportunity of being alive, of having been created by you, and having the chance and the opportunity of being here tonight to worship you, to think about you, your creation, and your love for all of us. May this love that we feel at every step of our daily lives be felt tonight in the words of those who will come here to talk about your gospel, who was delivered to us by our dear friend, our older brother, Jesus. Thank you for your blessings, and please allow us to feel your presence in our hearts, in our minds, so that we can, once we understand that you are love and light, may we practice everything that we learn from you. May your love be always with us. So be it. So I'd like to invite Nancy, and she will talk to us about Our Daily Bread, chapter 81.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I will read message number 81, and the name is In Paradise. It comes from Our Daily Bread book from Chico Xavier and Emmanuel. And starts saying, Jesus answered him, I tell you the truth. Today you will be with me in paradise. Jesus, Luke 23:43. At first glance, it appears that Jesus was swayed toward the so-called good thief through sympathy. But it is not so. In the lesson of the Calvary, the Master renewed the definition of paradise. In another passage, he himself affirmed that the divine kingdom does not surge with exterior appearances. It is initiated, developed, and consolidated in eternal radiance in the intimacy of the heart. On that hour of culminating sacrifice, the good thief unconditionally surrendered to Jesus Christ. The reader of the gospel is not aware of the obstinate work and the new responsibilities that would weigh on his shoulders in order to lay the foundation of his union with the Savior. Notwithstanding, the reader is convinced that from that moment forth the former wrongdoer would penetrate the heavens. The symbol is beautiful and profound and gives the idea of the infinite extension of the divine mercy. We can present ourselves with a voluminous baggage of debts from a dark past before the truth, but from the instant in which we yield to the designs of the Father, sensibly accepting our obligation of individual regeneration, we advance toward a different spiritual region where the yoke is easy and the burden is light. Upon reaching that stage, the indebted spirit will not remain in a false blessed attitude, recognizing that above all, with Jesus, suffering is rectification and the crosses are immortal clarities. That is the reason that the good thief in that same hour entered the lofty heights of paradise. Well, usually when I have a message to read and it mentions some part of the Bible, I usually go to the Bible and try to read to get more about it. And this part is the last minutes, the last hour of Jesus. He was going with his heavy cross and everything we know. So the moment is so sad, right? And when he was in the cross, he had two thieves, one in his right side, another one in his left side. And reading the Bible and reading other books that brings of this, there is a lot of discussion about exactly what Jesus was trying to tell us with this message, right? And well, they have different ideas, even reading about spiritist opinions, of course. But I try to follow what Emmanuel said here, and we know at that moment, Jesus, one of the thieves was like so nervous, so rebel, so upset, and saying bad words and bad things for the people. Other one, both were thieves. Other one, it was considered as a good thief, because at that moment he realized the bad things he did. And Jesus could read our mind and could read our soul. And he noticed that this guy, this good thief, was realizing the bad things he did, the bad actions he had, and at that moment he regret. So, and then when I came back and I see the name of the reading is In Paradise. It doesn't say in kingdoms, God kingdoms, right? And what they try to say here, we know the law, cause and effect law exists. And if the guy was a thief, whatever he had do and did at that time, robbed somebody or take some belongs for anybody else or in any way caused any damage in any other property or whatever he did as a bad action, we know by the law he has to pay. I will use the word pay, right? What he did. And we know not because he was beside Jesus and Jesus said, well, today you will be with me in the paradise. It doesn't mean that all bad actions or all bad things he did will be forgive at that moment, and that's it. But what they said on the last paragraph shows exactly what happened. Because as the same way as this good thief, we also have our debts. We we have a past. We did bad things in another level, but we did, right? And what he says here is, even if we have a huge baggage of debits from a dark past, everybody has one, before the truth, from the instant in which we yield to the designs of the Father. At the same moment, we accept the designs of God, of our Father, and we understand the law and how it works. And we realize that we did something wrong. At the same moment, we will say, yes, dear God, I did mistakes. I ask you to forgive me, and I ask you to give me another chance. I think that's exactly what Jesus is trying to say. It doesn't say that this guy was 100% forgive of the things he did and he goes through the paradise, but he accepted God in his heart. He understood the situation, where he was, why he was there. And then it says, when sincerely accepting our obligation of individual regeneration, when we understand what we did wrong and we have to regenerate, right? And he keeps saying, upon reaching that stage, the indebted spirit will not remain in false, blessed attitude, recognizing that above all with Jesus, suffering is rectification and the process are immoral clarities. So it it says the moment we understand that, the moment we accept what God says or said to us. And it finished this message saying, that is the reason that the good thief in that same hour entered the lofty gates of paradise. It doesn't say then he went to the God's kingdom. It says gates of the paradise. He went to a good place, and we have to remember that time they think about heaven and hell, right? Maybe he was trying to say, well, you are not going to the hell, right? You have another chance. I can read your soul, your regrets for the bad things you did. So that's what I understood. And another beautiful thing that I think we cannot forget is, you can imagine that moment. He was on the cross with screws in his hands and feet. So painful because he had a body like us with nerves, muscles, bones, and everything. He was bleeding, right? The sun probably was so hot or something like that. And in that moment, suffering, and the highest point of suffering, he said, he looked to the sky and said, God, please forgive. They don't know what they are doing. So to me, this last sentence is the most. Well, thank you. And Mackenzie will be over the lecture.
Nancy, or Nancy, as people call her in English.
Today's Nancy.
Yeah. Today is Nancy. Sorry. Nobody will write her name right. When we say it in Portuguese, it's Nancy. Nancy and Nancy, two people. She works double time here. Yeah, she works double time. So, this message is very interesting, and probably I will use at least a little bit of this message in what we're going to talk about, because, just like Nancy mentioned a few times, in this specific passage here, Jesus doesn't use the word kingdom, right? He uses the word new paradise. And why am I saying this? Because what we're going to talk about is chapter 2, like I said in the beginning, chapter 2, verse number 4. In chapter 2, item number 4 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, which is this is one of the covers. Of course, there are a few different ones. The title of this chapter is "My Kingdom is Not of This World." So it has a deep connection with what's happening right here in this message that Melo described. So that I can introduce what I'm going to talk about here, I'm going to use what Nancy just said, because it's like the perfect bridge. What happens is, when that Jesus is being crucified, everybody, like she said, knows the story, right? And although the accounts usually tell that there is Jesus and there are two other people being crucified at the same time, it's not very common to have only two people or three people being crucified. It is very common to have a lot of people being crucified at the same time. But of course, that everybody that tells a story focus on one side of the story. We will never be able to tell every single detail of every single story. So we focus on one thing. The narrators of the Gospels chose, and first for any reason, they mentioned two people and two thieves. One is called the good thief, which is the one that Nancy just talked about. And the other one would be the bad thief, the one that did not repent, that did not ask anything of Jesus. At least not that we know of, not that the Gospels mention. The message or the question that precedes this answer, because what Nancy read here says, Jesus answered him. So if Jesus is answering somebody, it's because the other person asked something. Okay. The question is, what did this guy ask Jesus? And this guy asked Jesus for Jesus to intercede for him, to say, hey, man, I know that you are, the king of Jews, whatever it is. I don't know exactly who you are, but I understand what's going on. I see, and I think that you may have some, you may have the key to the door. So can you please just talk to someone that's bigger than you and let me in? Maybe, what is funny is, today we get a book, right? And the book is like this thick. And then sometimes you write 7 books to tell one story. You write 10 books to tell one story, right? So we get the Bible and we get these stories of Jesus, and we have the conversation between two people, and the whole conversation of these two people is a question and an answer, and that's it. And you have nothing else. Of course, that it was not like that. Of course, that maybe, there was more talk, but you write only what you're interested in. So that's why every time you tell a story, and you put some words here and there, so that to make it more real, or at least to sound more realistic. So the man is talking to Jesus, or whatever. He's saying something. Jesus maybe is not even looking at him, cannot even see him. He's just maybe listening. The crosses are not like facing each other and you're seeing each other, right? So maybe the cross is right here, Jesus is here, or whatever, and then one is talking, then, hey, can you please talk to your father, being calling God your father, so maybe you can talk to him, and no, please let this guy in. And he says, can you intercede for me in the kingdom, in your kingdom? And that's one of the translations of what he says. And that's where the word kingdom enters. Because the good thief mentions the kingdom. But what is interesting is that Jesus doesn't answer using the word kingdom. Just like Nancy said, he uses the word paradise, which has a different connotation to it. Is not exactly the same thing. But even if Jesus had used the word kingdom, what is a kingdom if not a place where you work? Right? A kingdom is not a place where you just go there and sit and relax, unless you are the king, right? And how many kings there are in a kingdom? Only one. So if the guy is entering the kingdom, it is the guy, Jesus is looking at him and say, hey, look, you're coming with me to paradise. Meaning, okay, I have my place, right? I have my palace there. Let's imagine that Jesus is saying this. I have my palace, so come. But I am the king. You're not going to be the king there, so you're going to need to work. That's what Jesus is saying. It's simple, right? He is not telling, as we may understand, or we may think that, just like Nancy once again said, and she was so fortunate in saying those words. He is not. It's the law of what you do, you will receive it back. The moment that he asks Jesus, hey, can you allow me? Can you ask somebody to allow me to go inside? Is that moment of recognition of saying, hey, I know that I did something wrong, but I want to do something different. Can you allow me to go inside to do something different? It's not that he is completely forgiven and nothing that he did was wrong. That was wrong. He will have to redo it. No, it's like, come. Now you're ready to come. Now you understand that you can come. And at this moment, Jesus is recognizing for this man that he, Jesus, has this vision. He is a sort of king. And then we go back a few hours. That's why I wanted to start with this. I wasn't about to start like this, but once I heard her message, I couldn't avoid it because it's perfect. Now, let's go back where we are right there at the moment when maybe a few minutes later, Jesus will die. But now let's go back a few hours. Jesus is in a palace. Now he is in a palace. He is at a big house, at a mansion. We could call it a palace. And he is not in front of the king, but that person who is right there is as if he is a king. And he is, to some degree, worried. Why? Because there is a lot of people around the area telling everybody that, hey, there's this other king around town. So you should be worried about this because Rome doesn't allow other people to rule if they are the rulers. And what is the solution to this? Kill. There's no other way. Oh, but they're telling that he is the king of the Jews. Well, it doesn't matter. So he is in prison. I'm not going to go into any details about this. It's not the time for it. And he goes in front of Pilate with the governor or the king or the prince, whatever the name we want to give him. He is the one that rules that area. And he looks at Jesus and asks, people are saying that you are a king. Are you a king? Jesus looks at him and says, you are the one saying. Other translations in other gospels say, are you saying this, or are you repeating what other people are saying? But are you a king? And he is silent. He doesn't respond. So, one big question that arises at this moment, at least in my head, is why didn't Jesus answer? Why didn't Jesus say what it is or what is not? In one, he says something, in another one, he doesn't say. So it's for us to think about. But in one of the Gospels, Jesus says, you say it. You are saying. You are the one who is saying it. It's not me. I'm not saying that I'm the king. Because if I were a king, that's in one of the Gospels. If I were a king, my servants would come and would take care of me. And then we stop and think, okay, what would real servants of Jesus do if Jesus was being? They would not take him out. They would not take him out. It would not be the right thing to do. So it is interesting that Jesus asks us to think about this, because what would we do if we were servants of Jesus at that moment? Would we stay? Would we fight? Would we kill to release Jesus from prison? What would we do? We would let things happen. Because it's like he said before, give Caesar what is Caesar's, and God what is God's. If the rule of the time finds him guilty of something, even if he is not guilty of that thing, what will he do? He would probably, if it were today, fight a little bit, but in terms of arguing, maybe. But that's not the example that he did. He was silent. And in another translation, he says, not another translation, in the other gospel, he says, there are three gospels that recount this story. One is Mark, the other one is Matthew, and the other one is John. Luke doesn't mention it. It's similar. He says, even if I am a king, these are my words, not the gospel words. Even if I am a king, my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is not here. My kingdom is not the kingdom that you are asking about. Because there's this question. I come here and they say, look, I see a car outside. Whose car is this? Car is a lot of things, right? And then you ask, oh, it's what color is it? They say it's a white car. And then three people have white cars. Oh, what is the brand of the car? Then I say the brand. Oh, there are two white of the same brand. So which one is more like yellow because it's so not so white, for example? And then the person says, oh, that's mine. Okay. So now we entered in these specifics. So when Pilate asks Jesus about kingdom, he is not asking about kingdom the way Jesus is thinking about kingdom. He is asking about physical kingdom, which was exactly what some of his disciples were waiting for. Judas, for example, was waiting for it. And we know what happened to Judas. He killed himself because he noticed right at the end that he saw a kingdom as Pilate was seeing, not as Jesus was seeing. And all the other ones left, fled. Only John stayed. And I'm not even sure that John stayed because he wanted to stay. Sometimes I have my doubts that Mary was like, hey, come on, stay here with me. You're not going. Everybody was, I want you to stay here. I'm not sure. Just, But because it is hard. It is really hard to follow the examples and to understand that the kingdom that he's talking about is not the material kingdom. It's not to be physically in a kingdom and be the ruler of the world physically. He was talking about something completely different. So when Pilate asks him, are you king? And he just mutes himself and looks at Pilate and sees what Pilate is thinking, probably. He said, whatever I say here, it will not be stronger than my silence. So now is the moment to be silent. And then he keeps silent. He said, my kingdom is not of this world. And that's the title of the chapter here. So by all the examples that we see in Jesus' life, we can clearly see that when he is talking about consolation, when he is talking about forgiveness, whenever he is talking about do to others what you want them to do to you, he is obviously talking about something that's not related to this world. Because imagine, if these days some people say, why am I not going to be selfish? I have to be selfish. Because if I don't think about myself, who will think about me? That's what a lot of people say. That's what we hear a lot of times. So, in these days, we work, we have jobs, we have money, we have our houses, there are taxes, but taxes are just, right? They are set, they don't increase just because a person comes knocking on your door and say, hey, you're only paying like 6%. I want you to pay from tomorrow 16%. It doesn't happen. But at that time, whenever somebody woke up on the wrong side of the bed, I don't know what's the expression in English, but just woke up and said, today, I had a bad dream. And because I had a bad dream, I will charge more taxes from people. That's basically how it worked at that time. There was no reason for people to just come knock at your door and say, oh, we need more money. So I'm just going to write this thing, and everybody needs to pay more money. You don't have money, we have a house, we have a daughter, I'm going to get your daughter as tax. And this happened every time. This was common to happen. It was not something that, that's why it's, when we talk about, and I'm going to make the parentheses here, that's why sometimes when we talk about people hating the tax collectors of Jesus' time, it's not because they were just collecting taxes as we pay taxes these days. Tax collectors were those people who were employed by the Roman government who knew, let's say, I am a friend of Anna Paula's and I am a tax collector. It doesn't matter if I'm a friend of hers, if I'm her parent, if I'm whatever it is. If she owes something and she doesn't have the money, I can take her as a slave, and that's it. And period. No, there's no argument. And if you try to rebel, crucifixion is right there. So there's no escape. So can you imagine, we are living in a situation like that, and comes this man and say, hey, forgive the others? So people would say, are you crazy? So it is a revolutionary step, but not in the sense of becoming a revolutionary and fighting against the state. No, it's a revolution on the inside. is a new way of thinking about life. So if these days we see people talking about, oh no, if I don't think about myself, who will think about me? And then this leads to selfishness. Jesus was saying, my kingdom is not of this world exactly because of this. Because everybody only thinks about themselves. And I am here not thinking about me. I'm thinking about everybody else. And because I am thinking about everybody else, I'm going to show how it works. And does it work in this life? Sometimes. But for it to work, it is not one life only. It needs to be bigger than one life. It needs to be bigger than just this moment that I am living here. That's why his kingdom is not of this world of corruption, this world of selfishness, this world of pride, this world of vanity. His kingdom is of a world where everything is changed already. So he says, to some degree, that he is a king. He doesn't affirm, although some translations show that he says it, but in a lot of translations he doesn't say it. But when he says that, well, if you're saying that I am a king, and what I'll tell you is my kingdom is not of this world, he is to some degree saying that I am a king. And I am a ruler of some place. But my type of ruling is not what you are thinking. And that's how Kardec starts his text here. It's a very, very short text. It's rare to have only one small paragraph to describe this from Kardec. He usually makes a few points in a few paragraphs while talking about something. And he says, and he starts by saying, this is item 4, again, item 4 in chapter number 2. He says, we can all recognize that the kingdom of Jesus is not of this world. And everything that I just said, from what Nancy started and up to this point, is just to show what Kardec wants to say, that Jesus' kingdom is not of this world because of all this. Because when he says, okay, forgive, how can a person forgive if a person had just everybody in his family killed? If the person doesn't think that he will survive, that he is going to live forever. Why? And so many other, we could give so many other examples of this. It works perfectly if we think and if we understand that Jesus is telling us, you don't die. Look, you don't die. That's why we need to learn how to forgive. Because if you don't forgive, once you die, you will not forgive once you're dead. And then you will keep suffering because you still didn't forgive. But if you forgive, or if you are willing to forgive, once you're dead, then you go into paradise. Because now you will understand, and now you will be able to learn that you need to work. And work will be lighter. One example is, let's say, and I use this example a lot of times, but I will use it again. Everybody here was a child once. You were small, right, Ana Paula, once? You were a kid? Yes, you should see her face. We were all kids one day, and we hated going to school at one point. Maybe we still hate it. Maybe, I don't know. But if we keep telling ourselves that we hate school, that we hate to do this, and we have this feeling of hatred, of anguish, of, oh, I don't want to do this, it's a drag to do what I'm doing. From the moment when I understand that I need to learn to like, things start to change. So I have a job, I don't like my job, I complain about my job every day, I complain about waking up every day. What? Does it help complaining? Does it help complaining about the job? Does it help thinking bad things about my boss? It doesn't help. It only drags me through the day. A job that will be of 8 hours every day will look like I'm working 16 hours, twice the time. Just because I'm thinking that I don't like it. From the moment that I decide to like it, to give it a try, and to open up, things start to change immediately. It will not be perfect. Of course it will not be perfect. But things will start to change. I will start to see differently. Things will become lighter, will become clearer instead of darker and heavier. That's what the message said, and that's what Jesus tells us. He's not saying that once we accept his message, that his kingdom is not of this world, that everything will be solved immediately. No. He is telling us, look, if you accept it, you will walk lighter. It's like if you're taking some weights off your shoulder and you're walking, like you're floating on the air, or lighter, or walking with less weight on your shoulders. So we can clearly understand, if we understand Jesus' message, that his kingdom is not of this world. That's how Kardec starts. His kingdom is not of this world. Everything that he teaches shows us that he is not talking about here. Unfortunately, still today, some of us still believe that his kingdom is of this world, and keep fighting for power, keep fighting for money, and I'm not talking about people who don't believe in Jesus or who are not Christians. I'm talking about Christians. I'm talking about ourselves. Of people that still want so much power, still want so much money, that they say that if I don't have, it is almost as if saying that if I don't have money, it means that I'm not following Jesus. It's almost the same thing. Some people that I hear, and some things that we hear there outside. Hopefully, we are not like that, because I'm not criticizing other people. What I'm doing here is asking ourselves to think about how much am I worried about my financial, my physical situation compared to my spiritual and moral situation. What is the focus of what I am doing? Have I understood that Jesus teaches us that his kingdom is not of this world? Did we really understand this, or we didn't? Because he says it literally. He doesn't use other words. He says, my kingdom is not of this world. We can change words, we can change concepts and everything, but he died. He died, he returned, and he didn't stay. So if he is not here, it means that his kingdom is not of the material world, and we are still looking for material gains. It means, therefore, that unfortunately, some of us, hopefully not too many, but some of us are still didn't understand that his kingdom is not of this world. But that's how Kardec starts. We can recognize that his kingdom is not of this world. Hopefully we can. Kardec is very, very optimistic. That's why I love him. He is very optimistic. He says, oh, we can all understand this. We already know this. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to worry that you're going to try to be hyper rich and get all the money only for yourself, not think about others. No. He starts by saying, I know we all understand this, so let's just move on. And I spent like half an hour just trying to see if we really understand this, and I'm still not sure. So Kardec is much more optimistic than I am. But then he asks a question. But could he not also have a kingdom here on earth? So Kardec is saying, we know Jesus is not a king of this world. He's a king of a different type. But couldn't he be a king here? That's what Kardec asks. It's really interesting. It's the way Kardec thinks is something that's usually we don't think. And then he explains it. He says, well, we have so many different types of kings in the world. Like, we have the king of rock, right? Elvis Presley, right? Well, at that time, there was no king of rock. But, I mean, we have the king of pop, right? Michael Jackson. We have, I don't know, the king of basketball, right? Michael Jordan, whatever. We have the king of soccer, Pele. We have the king of whatever. That's the name. And then, oh, this is the prince of this. This is the prince or the queen of that, or the queen of pop, the queen of soul, right? What would Jesus be? The king of what?
Yes.
And then that's the question, and that's the interesting point of what Kardec wants us to think. What would be the perfect title for Jesus? He doesn't say anything, but he makes us think about it. Because what he wants us to understand is the power that some words have, and that depending on how we use them, we can construct or we can destroy stuff. We can build or we can demolish stuff. So if we keep saying that Jesus is a king, is a king, is a king, depending on how I think of what a king is, it will lead me, like Judas, like some of the disciples, some of the apostles, that the kingdom that he's talking about is the kingdom of matter, of money, of earth. But if we think about a king in terms, in a more metaphorical way, in terms of being the king that, or the person that better represents something, it can go to a completely different way. And how many kings do we remember as being good kings? Even after they die. But some people who were not real kings, but received a title from a group of people, after they die, their legend continues. And it even grows bigger because the legend becomes stronger. Then we have all these great athletes, these great philosophers of the past. So Socrates, the king of philosophers, for example. Why? Oh, not because he was a king. He was killed just like Jesus. He was sentenced to death being completely innocent. And he is remembered until today. And a lot of other kings, nobody even knows who they were. They are in a list between a lot of other kings. So Kardec asks us, it is as if Kardec is saying, look, I'm not just playing with words here, but I'm asking you to think about this. I'm asking you, does Jesus need to be a king? If he needs to be a king, what type of king would it be? And it is almost as if Kardec is looking at us and saying, look, you're calling Jesus the king, and he says that his kingdom is not of this world, and maybe you understand it, but apparently you still didn't understand. And that's what Kardec is saying, that we really need to think about what he what he represents to us. What is his power? Where does Jesus' power come from? Does it come from the amount of money that he had? Does it come from the amount of palaces, the amount of property that he had, of the amount of people that followed him? It doesn't come from anything that's material. And that's the biggest power that we can have, is the power of ideas. Is the power of the right idea that can and will change the world. I read this saying this morning that was sent to me a few years ago, and Facebook reminded me of it this morning. That my sister sent it to me, maybe, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and it was today. And it says, if I have $1 and you have $1, and I give you $1 and you give me $1, we go out with $1 each.
That's true.
Oh, but if I have an idea and you have an idea, and I share my idea with you, and you share your idea with me, I came with 1, and I leave with 2, just like you. That's this compare and contrast with what Jesus is. Money will stay behind. It's not important, of course, it is important. Nobody is saying that money is not important. Nobody, I mean, I am not saying. I'm not saying that money is not important. Of course it is. We live in a world that needs something to be exchanged. So if I want a shirt, I'll give you something and you give me a shirt, whatever it is. If in the past it was salt, salt was very valuable. So people would give salt and people would give what they wanted. So you exchange for salt. Then they found gold and so they were exchanging. Once we have more of this, of course, then greed comes out, and then I have more, then you have less, and all that stuff. But money is a way of exchanging things, material things. But I will die one day, and everything that I gathered will stay behind, literally stay behind. I will take nothing with me. In my case, it's great because, all my ugliness will stay behind. I'll be much more beautiful when I wake up on the other side. So it's good. So at least on my point of view is good. But everything material will stay behind. But what is not material will go with me. If I'm selfish, I'm sorry to say, you will carry your selfishness with you. If you are humble, you will carry your humbleness with you. Because that's what I am, not what I have. That's why an idea is very powerful. Because if I embrace that idea can change me to help change the world. That was the power of Jesus. So we could say that Jesus, as a famous movie that I don't know when it was made. It says the King of Kings. That's the title of the movie. Because he was like the ruler of all rulers, right? We could say, like Nancy said, that he's the King of Peace, which is not wrong, of course. He's the King of Love. He's the King of Forgiveness. The King of Mercifulness. By thinking today about this, I would say that Jesus is also the King of ideas. But not only any idea, the King of great ideas. Of ideas that can really change the world. That were able to mark a point in time. Unlike many other people in the world who think that they would change time, change everything, and then they are remembered, but not because of their good deeds, but because of the bad things they did. And people are trying to, not to forget, but to do differently. So some people would be probably the kings of, oh, what are you king of? Oh, I'm the king of how not to do stuff. if you want to do something, do differently than what I do. I'm the king of that. So some people are like that. Jesus is the king of do as I say, but also do as I do. Which sometimes is not what we are. It's not what I am. Good with words, terrible with actions. And that's the type of king that Jesus is. He's the king that doesn't matter if people call him king or not. Doesn't matter if he is above everybody else, but on the cross being killed, or kneeling down and washing other people's feet. It doesn't matter for him, because he is not looking for a position. He is not looking for being bigger or better than the others. He is looking to be better, always, but better than himself. And can you imagine that we say this, that we want to be better than ourselves? And in Spiritism, we say that nobody will ever be as perfect as God. So if nobody is ever as perfect as God is, it means that Jesus is not perfect. Jesus not being perfect, he is still working. He is still improving himself. He is still fighting to be better than himself, not better than the others. And we are always striving to compete to be better than others. There are healthy competition, just like sports, and we are on the Olympics time right now. The Olympics are happening, and we see competition. We see things happening. It has a cause. It is for a certain cause. But it's the stories that are not about competition most of the time that stick out and that provide us with food for thought. For example, and I'm going to finish this with that story. Yesterday, I don't know if you saw this or not, on the gymnastics competition, the women's side of the gymnastics competition, this girl from England was competing. And there are 5 in the same team. She has a sister that's with her at the same team. And they are obviously competing not only against each other, but together, so that the group, the team, the whole country can move forward. She goes on the floor routine, one that you dance and you jump on the floor, go back and forth. And she comes and runs, and she jumps, flips, I think once or twice, but when she falls, she doesn't fall right. And she falls with her head on the floor. She is able to stand up, and she walks, goes to the other corner, and when she tries to move, she stops and closes her eyes and moves back and shakes her head and says, "I can't go." And she stops, and people come, and she sits down, and everybody tries to help her. They want to bring her in a wheelchair, and she doesn't want to to go in a wheelchair, so she walks out to the state of the area, goes inside the locker rooms, and things are going on. Her sister is very worried because, not only is her sister, but it's an integral part of the group. If she doesn't come back, and she will probably not come back because it was terrible. Everybody will lose. But she comes back. And now it's not because of competition anymore. Because the way she is, she can do the best that she can, but what she wasn't able to accomplish already ruined a lot of the points for the whole group, or at least her part. But she comes back because of the group. She will not get a medal, probably, because she injured herself, because she was not able to finish her routine. She lost so many points that she will not be able to get anything from that. But she returns because of her teammates. That is not competition. That is not thinking about yourself. That is thinking about the others. And that's what Jesus taught us. And that's what sticks to us. It's not who won the medal at the end. Is it important? It is, as money is important. It's important. But it has a level of importance that matches one or two of those stories that happens every Olympics. They stand out above almost any other story of people winning medals. Because it comes from the inside. It shows the power of understanding that the kingdom is not of this world. The kingdom is of an inner world. It's not of this physical or material. That's what Jesus wants us to understand. That's where his kingship, his regality, his being a king is. And that's the power of his message. That's the power of the truth that he came to teach us. And that's the power of the great ideas that he came to inspire us to do. So hopefully we are already aware of his kingdom, and we are working hard to be part of his kingdom, and not only of this kingdom. May him and God bless us always. Thank you. And now we will go to the passes, which, as we usually say, it's not necessary, it's not mandatory. We take the passes if we want to take them, if we need to take them. Meanwhile, we ask everybody to keep our thoughts on high, praying, so that we can help the workers. And after that, we will return with our final messages and with our final prayer.